Welcome to our Lunch and Lead series. We have been doing this now for a couple of years, and they're really successful. We've learned so much from so many regional leaders across our area. We've had some guests from Chicago and from Indianapolis as well. It's a time for us to sit back and let some of our leaders share a little bit of their journey with us. My name is Sheila Matias. I am the Executive Director of the Leadership Institute and the Society of Innovators. And this is a joint effort of both of our organizations to try to really hone in on the leaders that we have who can teach us something. And so our guest today is an incredible leader in our region. I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to let my colleagues, Makisha Richardson and Jason Williams, help kind of drive the bus today. And Angie, who is no stranger to many of us, is going to share a little bit of her leadership journey. As we always like to say, leadership is a muscle, and the more you use the muscle, the stronger and that you become. And actually, it's leadership is for the brave. It's not for those who are afraid, and sometimes leadership is thrown at you, and you have to assume the mantle of leadership. So welcome, Angie, Makisha, and Jason. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Sheila. And yeah, we're excited today. For those of you that have been able to join previous Lunch and Lead sessions, we've already heard from a great slate dating back the last couple seasons from leaders across the region. And this morning, we're shifting into a bit of a new format. So we're going to enjoy a fireside chat here rather than a formal presentation, but certainly will no doubt be just as insightful. But I get the pleasure of introducing both our presenters, our interviewer, and as Sheila mentioned, our guest, Angie. So first, want to introduce our guest of the day, Angela Nelson Deuitch. She's a certified diversity professional in Michigan City, launching her own consulting firm, IND Squared Consulting, in 2017 after a previous stint as a leader at the NiSource organization. Angie provides workshops in person and virtually on implicit bias in healthcare, managing unconscious bias, strategies for creating a culturally inclusive classroom, and developing cultural intelligence. She has also started her own nonprofit, the Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity Academy, or IDEA. And when she's not busy working with companies and nonprofits across the region, she actually serves as a city council president for the Michigan City. So Angie is certainly a leader in many realms. We look forward to diving into more of that. And then want to introduce my colleague, Makisha Richardson. She's the Assistant Director at the Leadership Institute at PNW, where she is focused on the development and implementation of youth leadership programs, and also works with the local business community as a resource for leadership development, one-on-one coaching, and customized professional development workshops. In a previous life, Makisha was a teacher in the Chicago public school system and also helped lead the summer program at Summer Advantage in the Chicago market. So Makisha, I'll send it over to you, and you can dive in chatting with Angie. Will just reiterate our one bit of housekeeping. If everyone could please stay muted, feel free to share questions in the chat as we go, and we will be monitoring those, and we'll have a chance to hear from all of you here later in the program.
Thank you so much, Jason. And hello, everyone. I'm really excited to do this first fireside chat with Angie. I just want to jump right into it. Before we start talking about servant leadership, Angie, I want to talk a little bit about your background. Because leadership to me is often a journey that's traveled by very few, right? It takes a certain type of individual to answer the call to become, and not just a leader, but an effective leader. So at what point in your past did you decide that leadership was something that you were willing to take on?
Well, let me say this, because I see some people on here that I'm pleasantly surprised to see that my godmother is on the line from
Hi, Godmommy.
And Jackie Goodall. She's from Michigan City, and she's a former mayor over there out there in the East. And thank you for joining. So I love you. I just want to say that. And my mom is on. So I hadn't talked to her in a while. So to see her face pop up just brought a tear to my eye. So I just want to say hi.
I do. Yeah.
I will say that my journey started a long time ago as a kid. And I don't know if it's a pecking order thing, but being the oldest of 7 kids in the household and having responsibilities, I will say that my teachers at Eastport Elementary School here in Michigan City recognized something in me early, because it seemed like I always had some position of leadership as a kid. And I was one of the smaller kids in elementary school with one of the loudest voices, I'll say, and was always done with my work early. So it afforded me the opportunity to do a lot of different things. But I will say that they were an extension of our family. Our educators were, and really allowed me the opportunity to step into some positions. So I was always an elected official through school. I always served on the council, student council. I was a class officer throughout high school. So it became a thing that whenever there was an issue or problem, people always asked me to intervene or step in. And so that happened, then it became one of those things. Whenever there was an issue within the family, I would get the call if something was happening. And it was more about me just doing, if something had to be done, they know I would go figure it out and get it done.
So it sounds like people basically elected you to become a leader, right? So that's awesome, actually, because someone seeing something in you in multiple domains, across, your work life, your personal life. There were people in your life who saw leadership abilities in you, right?
Yeah, and I see that. I look at my two, my oldest and my youngest daughters, and they're very opposite, but they still have that leadership. One is a silent leader more than a vocal leader. So I think having the ability to know when you need to say something or not say something is just as important. But, throughout my, college career, same thing. I was always, National Society of Black Engineers, IEEE. I was always an officer. And then going into my career after graduation, I moved right into a fast track leadership rotation program within the phone company. So it just seemed that, growing up, everything that was happening in my life was all about leadership and leading, or being a mediator or a convener, or if something happened in the family, someone passed away, whatever it might be, they would call me and say, well, what do we need to do?
Yeah, so that leads me to my next question, right? How did you form your type of leadership? Because the leadership is, if the role is thrust upon you, and it seems like it was, but it seems like you obviously answered the call, you don't really know how to form your leadership style. So my question to you is, were there any challenges or successes that you've experienced along the way that you believe helped to shape your style of leadership? Do you have a different style of leadership as it pertains to the situation, or are you just the same way across the board?
I think that for me, I'm more of a emotional reader of emotions, and being able to empathize. I reflect back, and they say, well, you do all these different things for certain groups. And I'm like, well, there were a lot of groups that helped us. And when I say that, we had two parents in the home, and everybody has their struggles, whether it's layoffs or whatever it might be. But we had certain nonprofit organizations that always fill in the gap for us. And so I always felt a call to support organizations like that, organizations that filled in the gap, whether my elementary school. So I always went back and talked to my teachers. They kept up with us through school, but I always felt that calling to support them, the Miss Bachmans, Miss Penfolds of the world, because they really, truly impacted us and made sure we got to that next level. And I mean, they followed us through college, and it's 7 of us. So my leadership style really is more about connecting with people emotionally and meeting people where they're at. And so my style, it's very dynamic and flexible. I'll say that. I've led, teams that haven't been that diverse. I've had all men work for me before. And then, building a team, realizing that diversity is not just about race or gender.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's about a lot of different things. And I don't think you think about it that way. So I think my leadership style is pretty flexible, but it's more about empathizing and connecting with people. I'm really not the typical engineer. People say, oh, you know, you're an engineer and you like to talk to people and you like to do, and so that's a stereotype. All engineers aren't pocket protector people. I just, I love math, and I love that, just the theory behind that, but I'm really a people person. You know, I really engage with just getting to know people and listening to what they're saying and not just to respond.
Awesome. So I want our audience to know, because there are some people who may not be familiar with you. I want our audience to know exactly who we're speaking with today. So you went from an electrical engineer to city council president, and you are also a DEI consultant. Can you just share about your career journey? Like, how did you get to where you are today? Where are you today? What do you do? Just share a little bit more about your career path.
So I knew since 7th grade I wanted to be an electrical engineer. I went to a Purdue. I spent a week at Purdue West Lafayette going into 7th grade. My teacher nominated me from my elementary school, and I just loved, you know, everything about the week. And it was a minority engineering week that we spent a week down there. And I was like, I'm going to be an electrical engineer. That's it. I never changed my major. I never veered from that. And it was what I said I was going to do. Now, let me say this. After being in the program, I'm like, I'm not doing any of this work. I think it was more about I like academics. And, you know, I interned at NASA, at Kennedy Space Center. I interned at Florida Power and Light. I was like, I'll never work for a power company. Then I worked for IBM. And I realized I didn't want to be in the office cubicle by myself doing engineering work. So I went directly into management right out of college at the phone company. So I worked in places that had engineers, but I became more of a connector of kind of being the bridge between engineering, marketing, customer service. So I was the engineer that could speak in layman's terms. And so I never did electrical engineering work really until I did some part-time technical support for Dwyer Instruments from home. I had the luxury of being an expert on the phone, but really didn't even think about doing electrical engineering. So that was my first stint. So I went to the phone company, did that for 10 years, and they moved me to Texas. I lived in Houston, San Antonio, St. Louis twice, and then we bought Ameritech, and I was relocated to Chicago, to Schaumburg, and that's how I moved back to Michigan City. So I was with them and took a buyout, and then they became AT&T again, and I just basically took the buyout, stayed here in Michigan City, and said, okay, what am I going to do next? And I thought I was going to law school then, and that didn't work out. I thought I could just walk into the LSAT and take it and master it, and that didn't happen. So I got involved in the community, and I had a Girl Scout troop at Mullen Elementary School, and I started coaching soccer and just doing things with the school, school board. People were asking me to intervene, and I ran for the city council that back in 2007. So this is my second stint on the city council. Awesome. So yeah, once I had the buyout and I had more time, I just became super engaged in the community, and joined the city council in 2007. I ran and won and did 4 years, and then decided I was going to go back and get my master's. Then I decided I was going to go to law school. So a lot happened. I kind of bounced all over the place, and an opportunity came up at NIPSCO. While I was in law school. I finished my first year in law school, and my daughter was starting at Purdue, and started at NIPSCO and tried to go part-time. And I was like, this is not going to work. So stopped law school and stayed 10 years at NIPSCO. And last year, left NIPSCO, gave them my notice in July of last year. And September 13th was my last day. I was like, I'm going to do my own thing full time. And that's what I've been doing. And and it's interesting with corporate America. I told myself when I left the phone company, I was never doing it again. I was a little disheartened. And I think, and for all of you that are on here, companies go through cycles, especially when they're for profit.
Yes.
And when I've joined organizations, it's because their values pretty much align with, developing employees, and then we start getting into shareholder value, and we start cutting things, and I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. So I've kind of gone through 2 iterations of that, and I just think that, my focus has always been, how do I develop people, to get to the next level. I think my success lies on how good or how well people that work with me or work for me, how they look to the people, how they look to other organizations, how successful they are is pretty much the key to my
reflection of you. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Really
and even my mentors that I've had, and then some of the people that I've mentored, and I see a few people on here, so that's a good thing. But it's really truly, how do you bring other people up alongside of you, not under you, not beneath you, not any of that, but how you have people, you create opportunities for others to thrive. And it's a direct reflection of you. And I truly believe that.
So do I. And I think that's actually a good segue to the question. I wanted to talk a little bit about your work as a DEI consultant, but I think we're going to shift gears and just go straight into, what does servant leadership mean to you? Because I think you just pretty much gave a really good definition of it, but if you can just go give a little bit more detail about how you develop your definition of servant leadership and what that looks like in your day-to-day.
So my day-to-day, the title that you use, walking the walk, I think that, anytime, I've had an organization that, like I said, I had all men, and they were terrified of, oh my God, they've said all these things about you. And I will say that was one of my best teams. They took care of me. But it's more about showing them that you're in it. I'm a player's coach. I'm in it with you. I'm in it with you. If you can take a ladder off a truck, I can too. If you can climb a pole, I can climb that telephone pole too.
Turn my Zoom thing down because mute was not working.
I think you're okay. There you go.
Yeah.
And so, so servant leadership is more about, number one, being able to empathize with people and understanding where they're at. Everybody's not going to be the same. Everybody's not the same. And I don't think you can manage people effectively that way. And then second, having active listening skills, and that these are just some of the basic servant leadership definitions that you have, but they're so important. And then just being able to communicate with people, because everybody doesn't communicate the same. And I think we tend to, as leaders, assume that everybody is on the same playing field, and they're not. They're just not. And you have to meet people where they're at. And I try to do that, but I also try to, lift people up alongside me. So if there are opportunities, I share them as much as I can and try to elevate other people for those positions, because it's only one me. And I tell people, you see the same people all the time, doing things, but, some of those new faces, I would like to say that even in LaPorte County, that I had some role in moving some of these people around into some of these boards and positions, because you need more people and you need diversity in thought. And I don't think we understand that. Diversity of thought is so important, because everybody's experiences will lead to a better conclusion if there's a problem.
Yeah, we teach that here at the Leadership Institute, that diversity of thought is really important to making the mission work, right? And accomplishing the goals. Can you think of a time when you really saw servant leadership on display? Can you give an example of that? Maybe not necessarily something that you did, but something that you saw someone else do. Like, what's a really good example in your definition of servant leadership?
I will say that I'm trying to think of a time where stressful. You know what? I'll go back to a time where we had a referendum here some years ago. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe after that vote failed, that I was going to leave and just leave Michigan City. I was just so outdone with the comments and the rhetoric around needing a new career and tech education center. I didn't know how political, racist, all of that could be for building a new career tech center, right? And several people stepped up that I never thought would to speak for it. And people truly cared. But when I think of someone speaking up against bullies, and I'll just say it that way, I truly believe that as a servant leader, even though it may not be the popular answer or the popular consensus, a servant leader will worry about the people that are most impacted by the situation, not about the popularity, but a servant leader is one who steps up to defend people who can't defend themselves. And I truly believe I do that, but I truly believe most people who are in elected or in positions where they've been placed in something that's very critical or crucial to the inner workings of a community, you have to make decisions, and a servant leader will not be scared to do that. And it happens every day, all over the place. But I will say that was one time where I felt so stressed and in duress to the point I was like, I'm taking my kids away from here. And I thought to myself, well, how's that going to help anybody? How really, truly, am I helping anybody by running away from this because of, people who use, tactics that were just so horrible for something that could have been so good. So I will say that is what a servant leader is when there's a problem and it may not be popular, the answer, but you still stick up for it and stick up for the people that are impacted by it.
So you decided to actually walk the walk, right? Before.
Yeah. But that was the first time though, I felt like the weight of the world was like, why am I doing this? If you got people, a very small minority, just so nasty, do I want my kids to be in a situation like that? And I will say my kids were younger at the time and my kids are thriving, so it didn't impact them the way I thought it would, but I really, truly, I felt just burnt out, by that whole thing.
So you got to take a break because I really believe, not a break isn't like stop, but I want to pause here because you brought up stress, right? And having the weight of the world on your shoulder. That's really critical. For us as leaders, we have to take time for ourselves because I believe very firmly you can't give from an empty well, right? So in those times and servant leadership, I think is very different than any other form of leadership because you're constantly giving, you're constantly pouring, you're constantly rolling your sleeves up and doing the work with your team and leading by example. That is very exhausting. So what are some things that you can recommend to leaders? When do you know when it's time to take a break? Do you listen to that? And then what are some things that you can do to de-stress?
I just did that about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. My mom went to Texas and she's here with me. So she works with me.
Okay.
And while she was gone, I disconnected. I didn't do anything but work outside in the yard and in the house.
Oh, nice.
And people were texting. I'm like, look, I'm on a break from you.
Yeah.
Some people will take up all your energy and
if you let them. Yes.
And I've been one of those people that is, I'm pretty open. People, they know they can reach me, but I didn't let them reach me while she was gone, I was gone. So I did that, and I was quite happy with myself for doing it. But I think people need to understand you have to set aside time for yourself. And your family. My family, they know I'm always on 1,000. I'm running 1,000 miles an hour. My kids have always seen it. They've had to deal with it for a long time. And my husband, we have a blended family. He jumped in when I was super busy. I was, had 6 counties I was traveling behind. I'm like, if you want to be with me, you got to have a suit and a tie, because I go to a lot of dinners. So you just have to engage your family. And if you can make your family a part of your leadership and your efforts, my daughters have always, my youngest especially, has gone to so many events with me. My mom attends events with me. And if you can engage your family in your leadership journey, it makes it so much easier, because you're not stressed about not being there for your family. Your family understands it better. I even remember my torts class when I was in law school at John Marshall. My professor had me he said, bring your kids to class, because we were in a night class and there was only a few of us over 40. But he was like, they need to see what you're doing and why you are heads in the sand. And I brought my youngest daughter to class with me. And, and I think that helped them understand. And then I remember in my research and writing, we were doing a copyright, defending a copyright between family members and a pizza, they owned a pizza chain in Chicago. And every person in the family knew what my argument was, because I included them in that. And I think the more you can engage your family in what you're doing, the easier it is for the stress piece of it, because they understand what you're doing. But if you're just in it by yourself at home, it could be chaotic. It could be chaotic. But I think just being super inclusive with your family just makes it easier. And shout out, I saw my sister just said true.
So speaking of family, you say you come from a large family. You're the oldest of 7.
Yep, 7 in the household, but it's 9 of us.
9 of us all together. Yep. Okay, but you're still the oldest, yeah?
I'm the oldest.
Yeah, I just saw a meme the other day that says the oldest sister thinks she's the manager of the family. That sounds like you too, right?
Yes, I am the manager of the family. I am the boss of them.
How many children do you have?
We have 4. We have 4 altogether. Okay. We have 4, 3 daughters and a son that's in the Air Force.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. Really good. So it seems like we have some really good questions in the chat room. So I want to get to some of those. The first one that I just saw pop up was, who inspires Angie? So you want to tell us who inspires you?
So I have a couple of people. My Aunt Louise Taylor, she was a wonderful woman. She was a veteran of World War II, African-American woman, moved to Michigan City. Our family, my mom's side of the family, ended up here, because of her. And she was the first lady of a church, and she became our surrogate grandmother. My mom's mother passed away, when my mom was young. So she kind of became our grandmother. And, Aunt Louise would tell you these stories. She taught, but for her to be a, World War II veteran, how many African-American women could say that, right? So, and then she lived with us, she moved in with us when she was 85 and my daughter was 1 month old. And she was just super inspiring. And then you have my mom. I mean, my mom raised us, worked, then she decided she's going to get her degree. So she actually went to Ivy Tech, became a Chancellor Scholar, and then graduated from Purdue North Central right before PNW at 60. So
nice.
She really it's interesting. The focus for them was, you all are going to be educated, and you're all going to go to school, and And we did. And we kept saying, man, because she helped us with everything, all our papers, you should go to school. And so one day she just walked into Ivy Tech. She moved back here to help with my Aunt Louise, and relocated back from Florida, who comes back to the north from Florida, but relocated to help, with Aunt Louise, and just walked in when the baby boy was about to graduate from college and just started school. So we had a household full. I was in law school. She was in school. The kids were in school. She was like the den mom at the house.
So it sounds like you actually were raised up with servant leadership. So you had no other choice but to become a servant leader yourself. That's what.
Yeah, and our household. I mean, I think I've done this too. We've had so many different people live with us throughout my childhood that were transitioning. My mom, they always had somebody, had open doors for people. So I've even had friends when I was gone to college that were in situations that have lived in the house with my mom. So I think we just, when you've had so much help, it's hard not to help other people.
Mm-hmm. So kind of want to shift focus just a little bit. And I want to think about the current times that we're in. These are such uncertain times. I think that being a leader today looks very different than it ever has. I think that you can definitely pull on some of those people that have inspired you, people from your past, but it requires a different type of thinking, I think, today, in order to be an effective leader. So during a time of crisis, how do you think leaders can best walk the walk when you're dealing with things that are, you don't know what's coming next? There's so much uncertainty, right? And I think that COVID, you think back to like COVID and the pandemic.
Yeah, I'll use COVID as an example. You had a group of people that were very nasty, right? That, what are you doing? What are you, people are very reactive. I'm not a reactive person to things that are said, or you see things that happen and then expect you to react. I'm one of those ones, and maybe that's the engineering in me, but I like to take a step back and listen to both sides and see if there are other sides. Number one, there's always, different perspectives, and people expect you, especially being a female and being Black, just in that sense, they expect you to react to things that impact us right off the bat and to jump and take sides. Being a servant leader, that's not how you make good decisions. Decisions should be based on, number one, facts. And, people are emotional. And I think that they were, the comments were like, you aren't doing enough. People are going to die, and it's like, wait a second. Okay. We know that, COVID is here. We don't have enough facts to start making decisions on what to close and how to move forward. I mean, everybody, that was probably March of 2020 is probably one of the scariest times that anybody has experienced. I thought I had COVID. I think my daughter at school might have had COVID. And people still expect you to make decisions based on what was normal prior to COVID. And I'm like, we can't do that, And what I've learned to do is listen and not react to crazy, because that's what I call it, crazy.
Yes.
And people, we're at a time that people think they can say anything. Everybody thinks their voice should be heard. And that's true to an extent, but that doesn't mean I have to respond to crazy. And I think you give people a voice and you give them air when you respond to crazy. And I tell people sometimes silence is more powerful than having a response. Mm-hmm. And I wish more people would see that if people bonded together in silence, sometimes it will squash the noise. You let them talk to the blue in the face, and then come out with your facts. I'm never one that jumps out to be first. because a lot of times you've had some bad information.
That's really interesting. It's a really good take on it. Silence is golden. That's what they used to tell us, right? But I think in today's society, especially with social media, you're right. Everyone believes that they should be heard, and they should, like you said, but I think it's to an extent. But we as leaders, we as individuals, we as women, the men, we have the choice of what to respond to and what not to. And I think that sometimes when you give a platform to certain things, then it does. I think I agree with you there. Is Jacqueline Goodall, is that your godmom?
Yes.
Okay, so she has a question, and I feel I have to read it because it's from Godmommy. So since Angie says, she says, do you feel companies need to have their management teams understand the servant leadership style to stem the great resignation that is impacting not only corporate America, but also governments?
Yeah, I will say right now, people are, I just had this conversation last night with someone, and someone was saying, people just don't want to work. And I said, no, that's not the case. I said, but you need to understand that myself, both my sisters, we all quit our jobs last year. Okay. We all resigned from our jobs to do our own thing. So you have people that are in middle management, that are professional people that have left the workforce to do their own thing. I see that as it was an opportunity that people that may have wanted to move into a better career, higher pay, they picked up the gavel and they ran with it. But the problem is it left the bottom out, right? So now you have all these people that are paying wages under $45,000, $50,000 that are fighting one another for employees. So it's not about money. It's about how you make people feel, the opportunities, because I can go anywhere now and get a job. So if you don't have a good culture in your organization and you're not inclusive and you're not offering opportunities, because I'm here to tell you, the younger groups of workforce, it's about, my lifestyle. What is my lifestyle? I want a job that matches my lifestyle. It's not about money, because right now jobs are just open everywhere.
Yeah.
So the Great Resignation proved to me is that company culture is probably more important now to keep employees and retain them than ever. And I don't think people are realizing that. People need to go to work. No, there's plenty of jobs. I don't know many people who are not working. So that's not the issue. The issue is how you make me feel. And people are quitting, what they call them, quiet quitters, quitting every day.
Yeah.
And I talked to people, we had an employee quit last week. We had an employee quit this week. We had one. It's happening all the time because they can go get a job anywhere now.
Yeah. So we got about 5 minutes left. What I want to do.
And that went fast.
It didn't go fast. We have one question left in the chat room, and then I'd like for you to just talk to us more about your consultation business, your DEI business. So I'll read that question, and then we're going to punt over so you can end with a shameless plug for your business.
Oh, okay.
So the question is from Monique Thomas. It says, what has been the most difficult decision that you've had to make in your professional career, and how did you come to that decision?
So I would say twice in my career, especially with employees, I've had to lay people off before. And I think that was probably one of the guiding things, that reason why I left corporate America the first time. But, a lot of times we are in organizations where we are guilty of moving folks along from place to place when we know they are not good employees. They're just not good employees. And it appeared that I was being moved around to balance, I'll just say balance teams that have ineffective employees. I don't know. I was known for that. So, it just got to the point where I've had people and I've had to put them on performance improvement plans. And I'm going to tell you, my last stint before I left, I had someone that was in that situation. And let me tell you, our conversation, he was like, I've never had a manager support me the way you have. Because I just had to be honest with him. But then I realized it really wasn't him being ineffective. He checked out because of who his leadership team was. It wasn't about him. And he ended up being more productive than I could have ever imagined. But again, it's because I asked what he needed. And before it was just always dictated to him. So I will say that putting employees on these improvement plans based on, you really need to understand your employees if you have people that work for you and understand what their needs are. Because what I found in both cases, when I thought, I'm putting someone on a plan or I'm going to be laying someone off, is that there was no good documentation, and I'm basing it on how they're feeling when I got them, but they had checked out because they had no support. So I would just say that before you make any hard decisions like that you really, if you step into a position, that you take the time with your employees to really learn what has happened in the past to them. And you will find out that they can become more productive if they know they have the support.
Awesome. So we got to stop there. You got 1 minute left. So
I got 1 minute.
You got 1 minute, 30 seconds to tell us about your DEI business. Go.
All right. Well, actually, I'm doing a lot of different things, but the two things, the training piece of it is, I'm a certified diversity professional, but I'm also certified with the Cultural Intelligence Center and one of their champions. So I love them because it's data driven. And so any type of training on cultural intelligence, implicit bias, I'm there for that. But I also have a program at Michigan City High School working with graduating seniors that don't have career plans after graduation. So we are doing workforce development and work ethic training with the students and preparing them for what's next after they graduate. So you can reach us at diversity-squared.com, and our number is 219-321-0005.
Awesome. And Jason has also put that in the chat for everyone. So you can click in on Angie's website and check out more about what she and her team are doing. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Angie, it has truly been a pleasure. I've enjoyed speaking with you. We're going to let you guys go. It is now 12:45. Sheila, do you have any parting words for our guests?
I just wanted to tell you, Angie, as expected, I knew that you would be a wealth of information. And I really like that you shared from your heart, not just the facts of your life. You really shared a lot of your personal reflections. And I love that your mother and your godmother joined us. And I see some of our friends from Michigan City on as well. So thank you for sharing your heart with us. It was really a beautiful presentation. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.